Good morning. This is Sweetie Berry and the Women of Dare Whimsy, a community for gifted and creative women. We are here today at Between Us Girls. It's a weekly conversation, a break from daily life, so that we can talk about the things that face gifted and creative women. Today we're talking about the topic, write it out, and how writing, journaling, creating, storytelling, even making lists can really support getting things in your life to a peaceful place. You know, one of the things we talk about in Dare Whimsy is we want people to be able to release, restore, and to relax into being their gifted and creative selves. And one of those things is learning the tools. So today we're talking about the tool of writing things out and the different ways that the tool of writing, whether it be on a computer, in a journal, or just a pen and paper, can help change the way your day goes. For me personally, journaling was something the family does. I'm a fourth-generation educator, and so writing was something that my family viewed as enjoyment. If you were bored, you could go create your own world through writing stories. If you were stuck in a place where you couldn't do anything but wait, you could take paper and pen and write your way into a place that was a happier place than sitting in a waiting room. So writing was introduced to me at an early age as a way to give yourself pleasure, to give yourself an adventure, to allow yourself a space to get in a calm and peaceful world, and to be able to create anything at any level you want to create based on any imaginations you had. And so writing was certainly a de-stress place, but it was also my play space. It was like other people would get down a Monopoly. I would get down a journal or a pen and paper because I could write stories, and later, for me personally, I enjoyed reading my stories aloud. I enjoyed entertaining others with stories. And I enjoyed looking back at the stories. In fact, I have many of them from my childhood and my children's childhood of how they viewed the world then and how that changed and how they reinvigorated themselves differently in each of the subsequent stories or episodes of those stories. Much like in the movie Little Women, where children and siblings came together to write plays together. In my family, it was not unusual for us to play as a story developed. And sometimes we developed those stories in written language, and sometimes we perform those stories from the written language to performance level. So good morning. Creative women are always accomplishing, to me, imaginings that I couldn't even believe it came out of their mind. And so it's so exciting to me to hear everybody's story, and everybody has a story, whether that be their journal or whether that be their conversation. I'm going to pass this over to Gail Roddy, who's currently a playwright and an author and a speaker, but her current movement, Calling All Friendships to the Well, is placing in the Minneapolis and Twin Cities school area, and she is hearing a lot of stories about teenagers right now, and she's sharing a story of her own. Gail, would you tell us about that?
Yes, it's really exciting to share stories with teenagers and have them share their stories back. And that's what I'm doing here in the Twin Cities. I've been going into different venues with teenage girls and sharing a performance with them that starts with a 10-year-old girl and goes into a college-age woman. And it's been very, very fun. The girls really respond. I mean, I look around at the audience of these teenagers, and they're at rapt attention, and that's so exciting and inspiring to me to be able to connect with them. I've been working with teenagers for many years, almost 20 years now. It never ceases to amaze me what intrigues them, what inspires them, what holds their attention. And so the Calling All Friendships to the Well is really seems to be connecting with them very well.
Tell me how writing works in your life, Gail. How do you write it out?
I write it out through journaling. I've been journaling all my life, as with many of the Women of Dare Whimsy have done. I started out as a young girl getting the little diary that you used to get that had the key. I know some of you remember that from the 50s and 60s. And so I would start with that when I was 8, 10 years old and write. And it followed through into moving into large notebooks where I'd have page after page of ruminations about everything that was going on. And then to this day, I still write. I still have a private journal that no one sees but me, that I can write the most intimate thoughts and feelings, and I never share them with anyone. They're just with me and my heart.
You know, that's so powerful. I love journaling in general. I grew up journaling, as I said, and my grandfather and father, who were not father and son, my mother's father and my father, both kept a short diary in their pocket. In fact, my grandfather Getty kept an appointment calendar. It was maybe a 3 by 6 inch thing inside his coat pocket. But more importantly than the appointment he would have that day, he would write just a little paragraph about what the day was. And now that he's gone and has been gone for several years, we love to look at his 90-plus years and just say what he noticed. You know, it's a sunny day, or so-and-so had a vegetable fair, or so-and-so lost their house to fire. And just a few remarks about each of those little things, no more than maybe a paragraph. But he really taught me a lesson in that, in just capturing that paragraph. And my father did the same thing. He was a physician, and for a long time he was the only doctor in town who delivered babies wherever he was. And so he would talk about how many births that day, or how many girls and how many boys, and you know, how many children, or what happened, or so-and-so learned to walk, or one of the children at our house, you know, won a football award, just something, just mundane kinds of pieces of daily life. But in looking at those little paragraphs, now that they're gone, and particularly when they were alive, you see patterns, and you see patterns of where their joy is. And in my world, I write every morning, both in my journal and online, what I'm thankful for, what I'm grateful for, and just reviewing that helps me see where I am in life, and what's important to me, and what I'm valuing. And likewise, when I write down the difficult days, I tell some people in my client group that I do a happy face, a straight face, an unhappy face, just a simple thing on the parts of the day of my calendar, because I recognize then that the energy or the work that I'm choosing may be de-energizing me, or may not be a happy place for me, or something in the organization of that work may cause it to be a less than happy place. And those are clues for me, because sometimes I'm just a workhorse. I just do it. I just keep going, and I don't look up long enough to see I can make my life more comfortable. And writing is a way for me to recognize that, and to check in with myself, and to make sure that I am, in fact, paying attention to some big details, like I'm overworking and I'm not getting out and playing enough. And those journals help me see that. Edith, talk to us a little bit about how you write it out.
I've done journaling, but I also want to, I guess, bring up the fact that sometimes with as many thoughts as we have that go on in our minds, and trying to organize them gets difficult. So I like to do mind maps too, so to be able to have a pretty good size sheet of paper for my notebook, and be able to put, okay, what's my central thought? What is it I want to gather my thoughts around? And then just write all over the page, and connect them together, have them scattered or whatever. But then, like you said, because I've written it out like that, I can begin to see the patterns, and I can begin to see the organization of it. So mind mapping is another tool for me. Another form of journaling, again, is for me, as I've kept a mandala journal. So I have a question I'll ask myself, and then instead of again coming out in verbal form, I will come out in a picture form. So what is it that comes to mind? What's the picture that comes to the mind at the moment? And I'll sketch it. I'm not an artist, but those particular drawings reflect my heart. As Gail was saying, it's a reflection of the heart, coming from the heart. So those are two ways, again, to write it out is through mind mapping, all the ideas you can get down, and or actually do it in pictures. And I think those are both great tools for us to use with all the thoughts we have in our heads.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and particularly when we're in periods of overwhelm, or we're in periods of new situations. I had a friend whose house burned down, and, you know, that was stressful enough. They had to go live in a hotel for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they got word that an apartment was available, or a house was available, and they thought it would be just a move-in situation. When they got there, the last renter had left the house in shambles, and it took another 7-day effort to clean up, and to repaint the walls, and to take out the carpets, and to drag it out. That was, you know, really stressful for them. And her writing was one of her stress releases during that time, and her writing couldn't be coherent, as in I can just write days and days and days of pages like she normally could as a writer. She needed to draw a picture and you know, show "Gawk!" and that's all she put on that page, and that was enough to just release the steam of it. For me, as a writer who ghostwrites for some other people, one of the things I learned to do is to write on Post-its, because sometimes organizing those greatest to least concepts, those greatest to least things that are cluttering my mind up so I can't get to the tune of where I'm trying to write, just putting it on a Post-it and then recognizing, oh, yeah, getting the water bill paid in Arkansas matters, but that's a little thing. Let me stick it over here. And getting it out of my vision, just writing it down means that I remembered it. And sticking on the wall to the right lets me know that that's on Thursday morning's list. Now that helps me spatially make space in my mind to do the task at hand. And I do that a lot personally. I use a lot of little 1-inch by 2-inch Post-it notes, or I think it's like this big, yeah, it's like this big a Post-it note. I use a lot of those, and I'll stick them visually in front of my board on a chalkboard in front of me, and I move them to where they need to go. Today I worked with a client early on a new album cover for her new product, and we did the mock-up for it, but I'm not working with the artist until Thursday morning to complete that task. And so I took the details, I stuck it up in front of me, and I know later I want to send the artist the information that we came up with in the mock-up so that by Thursday we'll make it really fast. That's a different kind of write it out. That's in team playing and making sure that everybody's on the same page. One of the ones that I think is so valuable is reflective writing, as well as organizational writing. Martina, you write for many different opportunities as a physician, as a mentor, as a coach, as a doctor, as a writer. How do you personally write it out?
Well, like the two ladies who said before me, I've been writing almost all my life. It relieves stress. It gives me a place to put everything. And like you said, our ideas tend to fill up our minds and distort our thinking for what's going on during the course of the day. I have an ongoing issue with insomnia. I always have. But one of the things that I've discovered about my insomnia is that my subconscious mind is very, very busy. So, like you said, I've learned to keep cards at the side of the desk. I don't even wake up anymore. I just pull one of the cards. I know which way it's facing. I write it out in the dark. I don't turn the light on and put it down, and it's gone from my mind, so I can free that thought up until the next morning. And I've learned to write coherently enough that I can actually read the cards now. But I write about everything. You were talking about your father being a physician. Much of what I write starts as fairly mundane. It's about the children, something in church, something along those lines, but then tends to broaden into something that's really pressing deeply on my heart.
Absolutely. I think writing is a direct path to our heart often, and even when we're in creative writing, I think so often whether the creative writing is playing out what we're concerned about or playing out what we're hoping about or we're playing out a wished-for thing to happen, it's a place to play escape, and it's a safe place to escape. It's a place to enjoy the space of taking that brain concern or hope or wish and playing out the role. You know, so many of the times in the gifted children realm, perfectionism is such a heavy hitter. It just, they can't complete things. They don't want to show their art. They don't want to share their writing because it's got to be perfect. And I work really hard to burst that bubble early, because the process and the experience of writing creates the growth. It's not the end product. You know, one of the things I love to do is write stories with second graders as a piece. In fact, I just did this in the classroom last week, where I got to go in and you know, it's just the joy for me. But I sit down, I start a story, and the whole group of 18 children help me finish the story, and we write it together. And I have a big notepad in front of us, and they call out in a kind of unorganized, orderly fashion where the story goes. And sometimes we think the story's about a dragon. It turns out the dragon's a minor player. As it plays out, there's something else. And it almost always leads to discussion with these second graders. They always have something on their mind. In this case, that same house fire I was talking about was on the class's mind last week. They really wanted to talk about what it was like to go home and your house didn't exist, and what happened to the animals, and what happened to the family, and you know, where was their friend now that he's not in school because he's been out of school for 2 days while they got through the fire. You know, writing is such a great conversation piece with ourselves and with others. And sometimes when we reread our writing, we realize later, or even a day later or a week later, where our stress, our exuberance, or our joy, or our concern, or our curiosity was, and we can go back and address that differently. And sometimes it's just for fun. It's absolutely fun just to write and to use words. I'm an artist and a writer, so I love to take a word and wordsmith it with a picture behind it. Ashley is a full artist. This is what she does full time, and she is an amazing artist in Hammett, California. So this morning, how do you write it out?
Very carefully. You know, all of you ladies shared an aspect of writing that I employ as well. The one thing I love that Sweetie brought out was the sticky notes. I like really being able to rearrange the day in my calendar through stickies, what's hierarchy, what's most important, what's least important. And the second thing is I do keep a secret journal that no one has access to but me. encompasses my monsters. It encompasses things I'm working through that is so important to keep to myself because it's not for public consumption. And I can certainly understand why people feel the need to have a very polished piece and kind of get into perfectionist mode for public consumption because there's so many critiques and there's so many, well, this, I would have done this different, I would have done that different, and there really needs to be incorporated within a life that area where it's not public consumption, that you have it to yourself, and that's the aspect of writing that fills me up. Another aspect of writing is if I'm doing a portrait or if I'm doing something from my imagination, I'll write a paragraph about that person to kind of get me going. And it can be imagined, it can be a story, it can be any number of things, but the paragraph and the writing, the exercise of writing is a muse to getting to the visual portion of whatever I'm working on. And all you ladies are amazing. I love that you've been lifelong writers.
Isn't it fun? One of the things that, of course, in the last 2 decades, we've seen a lot more of blogging and journaling out loud. And there's a huge line that goes there on, are you blogging for yourself? Are you blogging as the leader of a community? Are you blogging to be a part of a community, which is very different than leading sometimes? Are you blogging for self-satisfaction? Are you blogging for profit? And, you know, we're seeing more and more bloggers who dropped out of blogging after 7 or 10 years and only became publishers of for-profit information about 5 years ago. And now we're seeing a different trend. We're seeing people who love to write, who were bloggers originally, who've maybe gone out and wrote that book, who maybe went out and wrote the book and came back and said, you know, I want to blog just to blog again. I don't want SEO. I don't want graphics. Allie Worthington is one who's just done that. She has a brand new book coming out. It's a time where a lot of publishers will tell her that she needs to be using SEO and Google Analytics to watch her blog. And she just said, hey, you know what? I loved blogging a long time ago, and this one I'm doing for me. And I don't want SEO, and I don't even want comments because I don't want to be encouraged to write a certain way because it gets somebody to react a certain way. I want to just write the experience. And I think that's such a valuable thing to do. You do have to define what writing's about. And with the internet, you do have new precautions to be concerned about because things that are loaded to the World Wide Web rarely go away forever, even if you delete it. And so there's a level of prudence that needs to be there for private things to be kept private, for the safety of children, for the safety of your address and your family when you're traveling. To write it out also takes on some responsibilities because you're free to write what you want to, but what happens with the writing you do, you're responsible for. You know, we are always responsible for making our own choices, but you're also responsible for the consequences of those choices. And sometimes emotions can drive unwise receptorship. We see it on Facebook all the time. People get mad, blow up, and make a comment specifically to their page or specifically calling out their page, and it's off to the races. And write it out. One of the things I really wanted to encourage, too, was a different prospect of writing it out, because gifted kids are always about getting things done or getting to the end or getting to the product. And one of the things I wanted to do in this conversation was talk about the difference between writing out a to-do list and writing out how to get things done, because they're entirely different topics sometimes. You know, one of my friends takes great pride in the fact that they have 100 things on their to-do list every day. And for a while that sounded really good to me, and it's something I even matched for a while with her, that I thought, wow, if I could get 100 things done between loading the laundry and unloading it and doing the work and doing a task, that would be so cool. But I learned pretty quickly on that if it didn't have a module of time connected to it to do those things, I would just double the list and do 200 that day. That might not fit being physically active. That might not fit being emotionally free from the desk and going out and enjoying the sunshine. That might not even fit the goal of what the goals were, except to get it done. And sometimes the greater value is not getting something done, but recognizing where you are with the project. You know? There are many days in childhood, as a mom or as a caretaker, that the sun is shining and the weather's perfect, and that's the day you got to go while the child's healthy to go play outside, because the child will be another year, another day. You know? And likewise, in our daily life, we're not guaranteed anything but today. We really aren't. And so if you're not living the life you want to live today, it may not happen tomorrow either. That doesn't mean that we're where we want to be right now and everything's perfect. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, are you living in a manner that at the end of the day, you had a good day? You were pleased with who you were. You did things in a way that was productive for you. You learned a little, you grew a little, you had a routine that was comfortable paced, that was calm enough. Writing it out can be a real significant support system of getting to that place. We're all going to have good days, bad days, difficult days, and charged days. But when we start writing out what comprises our day, some of us are very surprised to find out that there's 3 hours in social media when you thought you were doing 15 minutes. Some of us are thinking that laundry will take 542 years, like I do, and it turns out it takes 24 minutes to load, and it takes 45 minutes for the washer to run. You know? Sometimes writing it out is very eye-opening to opportunities of what can be diminished in your life. Have you looked at a list and decided that, oh my gosh, I'm doing this X amount of times, maybe I need this product instead, or this method instead, or this routine instead to stop that action? You know, for me, it was a little tool we used that had like a 3-gallon bucket on it, and the tool needed to be one that was 10 gallons so I could do it in one trip. And it was so easy at that point to stop watering 54 times a day and to get more water the first time so our animals and livestock and things were fine. Sometimes that writing it out helps you see those connections that you might not see. Gail, when you're working with to-do lists, I know you've really worked on your scheduling this year and you've really worked on your planning. How has that changed how you do from just simply writing out a to-do list?
That's a good question. It's helped me to simply organize my time a little bit better, because I'm one of those who can get off on a tangent real easily. You know, especially being at home here, you know, you're working and all of a sudden I look over and see something that needs to be done across the room, or maybe I'll throw some laundry in, and I can get off on a tangent. Writing it down has helped me to focus on, these are the 2 hours I have to get this task accomplished, and I'm going to focus on that. And then at the end of the day, I feel that sense of accomplishment, not just about the task, but about keeping on a plan that helps me. And then at the end of the day, I thought about what you said, sweetie, about the gratitude in the morning. That helps me at the end of the day to find out, what am I grateful for? Because if everything went wrong, at the end of the day, I can write in my journal that I'm still grateful for the breath I took, the fact that there was water coming out of the faucet, I didn't have to go out and get water from a well, all those little things. When things go wrong, at the end of the day, I can say, no matter what, there are these things that I'm so grateful for.
Well, that's, yeah, you know, we live in a multitasking, get it done faster world, and we all use applications on our iPhones. We all carry smartphones for the most part. You know, sometimes that's just not the best way. Our dear friend Sarah is not with us today because of a multitasking disaster. She was walking through getting ready to go to a child's game, and then she was pushing along a box to try and get it further to the car faster to load her. And in the process of that, and I think a phone call came in, she ended up flipping over the box and getting pretty hurt. And so sometimes our lives aren't quite that stark on the train wreck, and we certainly look forward to her being well and being back with us. But we can do that figuratively to our day with just those interrupts, as Gail was pointing out, and not recognizing where it fits. And sometimes writing it out, you know, gosh, I know for me as a strategist, when I look at completion types of things, you know, today I had a specific task to work with an author and a speaker on the cover of her album to get a rough draft idea of what she wants her brand look to be for this album. That was the only assignment. It took about 35 minutes tops. And by having that preamble for the conversation with the artist will be able to do it very quickly. But had I said, we're going to do this to completion today, oh man, we could have been there for 2 to 3 to 4 hours to build all those components and put it in, and that would be an unrealistic need for today's conversation. Not to mention, when we write it out and think about it, it gives space to reorganize it and to come up with an easier plan, or to have some ahas of what's needed differently, or why something that might be perceived as really forward might actually regress us in the long run because we hadn't considered that perspective. So I really encourage people to not be in the hurry of finish. And gifted kids and creative minds love to finish. They love project stuff often. I have, in all my years work with gifted women, it seems like I have run into less than about 15% of the women who really love the process of the project. They like the process, but they really give value to completion. And sometimes that's, because the world pressures completion, but sometimes that's because we've forgotten how valuable the actions are, the experience of actually doing what we love. Edith, talk to us about how, because you work with people all the time and work with us all the time who need to learn how to take that list and turn it into not such an overwhelming explosion of thoughts in every direction. Talk to us more about that.
Well, I want to-do lists have been a tool for a long time, but I guess I would like to emphasize here, and I emphasize with my clients, is what is it you value at the moment? What is the value for that day? So if family is a strong value, self-care is a strong value, and career or work is a value, then what are your top 3 to-do things for each of those areas? And in the order of the value to you. Work happens. Work creates cash flow to take care of bills and things like that. But if family is a value, then remembering to say thank you to somebody, remembering to have that serendipity so you've got, oh, the sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, let's go outdoors and play for this 30 minutes. I can interrupt my lunch hour, and rather than sit here and work on more paperwork, let's go play for a few minutes. Parents at work away from their kids, to think about that child for just those few minutes and write something down as a little funny note or something. Kids love those kinds of things. But what I'm emphasizing here is, versus having 14 or 200, as Sweetie was saying, on your list, what are the top 3 relative to your values? What's important in your life? So that, again, you're organizing it and you're not becoming overwhelmed. We're only asking you to do 3 things that day, and being able to keep it in mind with what's important to you.
Absolutely. And to me, one of the things that the Desire Maps, a book that came out a few years ago, talked about that I thought was so valuable is, what are your desired feelings? What are your desired outcomes for this day? Not just this day, but every day. What are the, do you want to feel courageous? Do you want to feel compassion? Do you want to feel as though you've accomplished? Do you want to feel at peace? I believe the Desire Map is one of the strongest tools I've ever seen, because it went through a 180-day process of continuing to repeat to yourself and to rewrite it from different perspectives. What is your desired core feelings? And I don't believe personally in giving your feelings 100% of the market, because feelings can be so affected by diet, and they can be so affected by sleep and stress coming at you. But I prefer kind of in my own mind to think of tones. What are the desired tones I want in my life? And the tones for me are a peaceful, paced existence. I don't want to feel like I'm in a rush all the time. I want to feel like I'm close to those that I'm close and choose to be family with. I want to have the tone of organization in my life. I don't want to just have wildness everywhere. Ashley, I want to pop back over to you. I didn't mean to leave you out so long. In that process, what are the things that you do to help create those tones? We have about a minute for that answer, and then I've got to get into our close-up because our show's about over.
Oh, thank you so much. I love what Edith said, and remembering your values, and I love what you said too, the tone of the day, whether it be musically or colorful. Every day is different for me. I get a lot of ad hoc and pop-in type things, so I really have to be strong within my core, and I write things down on index cards to remember what I need to do, and I carry that with me, and that's been such a lifesaver, because I write the index card when I'm up, and when I feel a little bit of ebb throughout the day, I go to my index card, and it triggers at least a level up of a good feeling, and I can remember what I was going to do that day. So
I love that. You know, one of the things I have been doing for the last week that's I read in a magazine article, actually a research journal article, that said if you're being your greater self, if you're being the you want to be, and they don't even use the word greatest because that's an all or nothing perfection thing. If you're being your greater self, if you're being the person you want to be or want to grow towards being, what does that look like for you? So for our popcorn question, really quick, when you're looking for the word that is your greater self, what would you write down as that word? Martina?
One word?
One word.
Centered.
Ooh, great word. Gail?
Peaceful.
Ooh, I love that one too. Edith?
Giving.
Oh, you know I love that one. Ashley?
Freedom.
And my one word is engaged. I want to be engaged wherever I am. And if that means engaged with the person in front of me, that's where I want to be engaged. If I want to be in front of the task and that's where I'm at, I want to be engaged. I don't want to just bumble through life. I want to know where I am and be fully engaged in that space and not in a hurry to get to the next space and not huffing and puffing from the last space. So I want to be able to be fully engaged. You know, I said this year my words were gather boldly, and I love gathering with you ladies every single week at Between Us Girls in Dare Whimsy. Tomorrow, on Thursdays, the day after our live show, we have a blog where each of us have written in on the topic of the week. This week's topic was learning to write it out, and all the different ways writing and scheduling and list making and the ways that we can handle writing as a gifted and a creative and how it affects how we organize our life and our experience. I hope you'll visit us at darewhimsy.com, and I hope you'll join us next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Again, this is Sweetie Berry, and thank you for coming to Between Us Girls.